Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Crimson Crossover. Today, this is not a season-ending podcast. This is a Final Four podcast. Which, man, if you would have told us this 2 weeks ago that this is what we'd be doing, I would have called you insane. Um, Obviously, Christian Sykes here, Charles Branch, Joey Blackwell, as per usual. How you guys doing today?
Good. Had to cancel a vacation, to stick with this job and cover this, but but no, I'd rather be doing this than anything. I know that when you founded Crimson Crossover Christian, that this was one of the goals, to get to a point like this where we could talk about Alabama being in a Final Four, and obviously, just as fans in general, it's been one of our goals to see that, or on our bucket list to see that in our lifetime. And we're finally here, and it still feels unreal. And I know we're probably about to talk about how we feel, how these past few days have gone in a couple of seconds. But man, it's good to be here, and glad to finally be talking about this.
Still quite hasn't hit me that we'll be playing a game in the Final Four. I don't know if it will really hit me until starting lineups Saturday night. Just super excited. And yeah, this is typically a point in the year where we start looking towards next year. So I actually had some conversations already looking towards what next year roster could be. And I think that's just kind of builds the excitement, not only for this weekend, but just what we hopefully have as Alabama basketball fans to come in future years. You can't make the Final Four unless you initially get in the NCAA tournament. And we've been lacking in those appearances for many, many years. And I'm hoping that we're about to go on a run here for several years of just continuing to give ourselves an opportunity to get back to Sweet 16s, Elite Eights, and make more attempts at Final Four runs in the future. But just really excited for not only this team, but the Alabama basketball program, everybody that's come before it, all the players that put the work in, coaches, assistants, the fans. It's a passionate group. I mean, you got to be passionate to stick with it as long as we have, and to attend as many NIT games that we've probably had in the past too. So this is a celebration not only of this team, but I think just the basketball program and that everybody's been associated with it.
Yeah, and I mean, Alabama basketball is not a program that's like a one-off type of program, right? Like this isn't something that Alabama basketball hasn't had the ability to make in years past, with that being the Final Four. I mean, you're talking about a program that's second all time in SEC wins. One of the most, not I wouldn't say one of the most, but a storied program, nationally, that has just never got over the hump. I mean, Tennessee's another one of those schools that is like that as well, where like I think Alabama had the second worst record in the Sweet 16. The worst record is Tennessee, obviously. Um, and it was just like Alabama was like, okay, Alabama is basketball is good, but Alabama basketball is good, but they're historic, but, and now the but's not there. Um, which is great to see unless you're a butt person, but
Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Oh goodness.
You could, I guess you could say we got liposuction and
Oh goodness. I was talking with after the game, after the Clemson game. I was emotional after the North Carolina game, but really was the Clemson game, just because once we beat North Carolina, it was, my brain was stuck in the mindset of, okay, that was the hump. The guys have gotten up we're able to get up for that game, but this is a game on paper Alabama can probably win. Will they be able to, kind of, did they spend all their energy against North Carolina, and this is where they fall? And obviously they didn't. And no, I was laughing, and this is actually a question that I have for y'all. I was kind of laughing / sobbing after the game, and my wife Emily was kind of just sitting there. She was like, what are you thinking about right now? What's making you laugh about all this? And the reason I was chuckling was I was thinking back to the Norfolk State game that was just barely 8 years ago. Or sorry, 6 years ago, excuse me. And the fact that if you had talked to me on that night and said, within 6 years, Alabama's going to be in a Final Four, I would have thought that you should be locked in an institution somewhere, because it just didn't. That was like the bottom of the bottom. And so, that's kind of my question to y'all, to kind of start us off here would be, what would have been your reaction like? Just how impressive is it to have been, 6 years and we're here? Did you think that we could get to this point in that short amount of time? That's just a general question I have.
I'd let Charles go first. I'm going to be a little bit long-winded on this one.
Yeah. I think my expectation would have been that it would have been a Cinderella type run. I mean, we did this as a 4 seed, and yeah, we had the opportunity to do it as a 1 seed last year. But I guess because of our only Elite Eight run, we were an 8 seed. So it felt like something like this would have happened, where we would have pulled a bunch of upsets along the way. And we really haven't done that. I mean, even the North Carolina game was basically a coin flip. And so to just play the way we have, and I just when we go back to the first weekend and we were previewing our draw of Grand Canyon, St. Mary's, Charleston, I used the word perfect, and then I wanted to walk it back because this is March. But I really felt it was a draw that was going to set you up well to get to the second weekend. And then Mississippi State flames out in the first round, but really thought they could have given North Carolina a game. And then as you get into North Carolina, just really thought we had an opportunity in that matchup, that they weren't going to pose the size issues that we've dealt with. I mean, Baycott's a guy who's, he's phenomenal. He's been in it for a long time. He's played in a national championship game. He's going to be probably one of those guys that's the faces of North Carolina with all their other faces that they've had. And then, I don't know if you can say we're fortunate to play Clemson, because we lost to Clemson earlier in the year, and they're a team that teams like that give us challenges as far as being more physical. So it's similar to I think we were talking about beforehand. Once we got to the Clemson game, even though we had lost to them, I just felt so confident about that game that we were about to kick the door in and be in this situation to be in the Final Four. And just, yeah, I mean, we've been through it. I mean, just everything that we've had to go through as far as, well, I like to use the phrase, this is Alabama basketball. We'd have great things happen to us, and then things unfortunately would fall apart that sometimes were out of our control. And like, even you can tell I'm still trying to process all this because I feel like I'm just rambling on. But yeah, where we've been, because I was not at the Norfolk State game, but I know a lot of people that were. But I'll use this. Joey, you and I sitting together at the Clemson game this year in Tuscaloosa, and how just defeating that loss was, because that was the second loss of the year. And while we're not putting football expectations on this team, we just really thought this team had a lot more potential than flaming out against Ohio State and then losing that game to Clemson. I mean, that was just a major gut punch. And then we were getting ready for the 3-game stretch where we were all realistic and didn't think we were necessarily going to win those games. But that was definitely the turning point, because we were competitive in each one of those games. The team continued to grow closer. It got healthier at times as far as guys during the summer who hadn't really been part of the system. And that's we got into January and was just dominating teams. And then, of course, injuries got us again in February, and here we are healthy again. So, yeah, it's been a range of emotions this year, as only Alabama basketball can be. But yeah, it is surreal that 6 years ago you're losing to Norfolk State. You got guys on the team who, don't have a love for the game anymore, like Herb Jones kind of talked about. Nate Oates reinstilled that love of the game for him, and now he's playing in the NBA. And the other NBA players that we have, like a Colin Sexton, like a Brandon Miller and Noah Clowney, just the complete 180 this program has done and is still in the process of doing is just completely surreal.
Yeah, for me, that Norfolk State game was kind of the like. Look, I don't want to be brash, but I guess I kind of have to be. I was rooting for Norfolk State to beat us in that game. I kind of felt that the Avery time had run its course. The program was no longer improving, which I do think, and I'll give credit to Avery Johnson. Avery Johnson did improve the program. I like to refer to him as a bridge coach, in the sense that he bridged us from being this like program that had lost all national type of like relevant or not relevance. What the heck did relevance? That's not even a word. Like national spotlight. And he brought it back by bringing in guys like Colin Sexton, bringing in guys like Kyra Lewis, like these guys that were destined to be NBA players. Obviously, Herb Jones, when he brought him in, I don't think that they realized that he was going to be as good as he now is, but like guys like that. So you have to credit Avery Johnson. But during that Norfolk State game, I was rooting for Norfolk State because I just wanted it to end. And we had heard rumblings of him potentially being let go after the season. It always felt like in February, Alabama be in a spot to where they could make a run into the March Madness, maybe get like a 7 or an 8 seed. And every single year you lose 6 games in February and then you're out of it again, or you're on the bubble again, and you're always on the wrong side of the bubble. But I remember specific conversations, and we used to have a group chat. It was me, Luke Ratliff, Matt Landry, Andrew Terry, some of the like staples that you see within like Twitter as far as like like Alabama basketball fans. We were all in a group chat together, and we had been in a group chat for 3 years going through this Avery Johnson experience is what I would like to call it. And I remember when Avery got fired, like Luke, for example, was not happy about Avery getting fired. And I don't tell this story to a lot of people, but the reason why he wasn't happy was because of the way that the Johnsons treated him. He didn't think that there was another coach that could come in and treat him as well as the Johnsons did. Obviously that's not the case. Nate came in and just embraced him, and Luke's a part of the Alabama culture, a part of the program building from the fans' point of view. But in those conversations that we had, we said that we would love to just have a coach that would come in and we would make the tournament every other season. That was like top of the top expectations. Hey, like we'll have a bad year and then we'll come back the next year, make the tournament, maybe win a game. Like that's all that we wanted. If you would have told me after we fired Avery Johnson that we were going to hire a guy from Buffalo, which by the way, and Joey, you were on the beat and you know this, Thad Matta was a thing that was being sourced by reliable sources. It was not like a fan just make it like this was reliable information that not only the local media was getting, but national media was getting.
Yeah. And we were actually really close to putting out a story on like, not that he was going to be hired, but like this is a guy that we're hearing. And fortunately we never published that because that would have been really bad. but yeah, no, it was a lot more real. I know it's kind of a running joke, now with a lot of people, but there was a lot more real to that than a lot of people realize.
Which leads me to believe that, and I love Greg Byrne, but I can guarantee you he put some of that information out there to figure out who was saying things and to make sure that they were no longer saying things about the university. That's just my speculation. I don't know if that actually happened, but
I don't know if it happened then, but it does happen sometimes. So
yeah. But yeah, our expectation was maybe make a tournament every other year. And now you're talking about a program that's made the Sweet 16 in 3 of the last 4 years. And not only has made the Sweet 16 3 of the last 4 years, has also made a Final Four now, right? And if you would have told me that 6 years ago, I would have been like over the moon. I don't even know how to even be able to describe the type of like. First of all, I would say you're in a loony bin, similar to what Joey has said, but like what Nate Oates has done to this program to not only bring them to an even brighter national spotlight, but to accomplish things in a year that we all agreed that this is supposed to be a down year, right? Like, oh, Alabama doesn't have the NBA talent that they've had in years past, and oh, obviously the defense has been lackluster for a large part of the season. Like, for this team to make a run the way that they have, I don't like to use football a lot, but I like to liken it to the football team this past season, right? The the way that the football team kind of played and the fans got behind them, and it kind of revitalized a lot of the staleness, is what I would describe it as, in within the fan base. As far as like, there's an expectation Alabama's going to go win by 30, 40 points. And that didn't happen this year in football. Um, every game was a grind. Alabama had to fight tooth and nail, and it really brought the fans to come to love the team, the football team this year. And I feel like this Alabama basketball team embodies that as well. Like, it's not a, oh, we have an NBA caliber player on this team. It's like, okay, we have guys that are, bought into the blue collar mentality, the type of like, I don't know, diving on the floor, taking charges, getting offensive rebounds, all of these things that Nate Oates has preached about. Like, this team is the embodiment of that, and they're a team. It's not an individual player doing it all, even though Mark Sears has been absolutely phenomenal this season. But you saw in the tournament, every single game, a different player stepped up. You had Mo Diabate in Grand Canyon versus Grand Canyon. You had Rylan Griffin and Grant Nelson in North Carolina. You had Jaron Stevenson, who was shooting below 30% from three, hit 5 of 8 threes after airballing 2 of them in the first half. Like, that, I think that's why this means so much, not only because you broke the barrier and got to the Final Four, which is the only thing that certain programs within the state has had over us for 6-7 years now, to the point where now those certain fans of those programs are now stating the obvious, which is Nate Oates is a better coach than Bruce Pearl. I've been trying to tell people, no one's been listening. Well, no one outside of the Alabama fan base has been listening, but no, it means a lot. And that's why after we won the Sweet 16 game, like, I cried, because it means something. And for people that have put time and effort, like, and I'm not trying to say we're above anybody, because they're like, everyone is a fan that's a fan, deserves to be emotional, and because people pour their money, their time, their energy into rooting for this team, rooting for this program. But 5 years ago, when we started doing Crimson Crossover, we didn't know how Nate Oates was going to do. Like, we were just going to cover basketball because we have the love for Alabama basketball. And it's such an honor and privilege to have a platform to be able to talk about this in April with you guys. And it just means a lot to me, because like I could never imagine 5 years ago that this is what we would be doing, or this is what I would be doing. I can never imagine that I would be in Los Angeles last weekend covering basketball, being in the locker rooms, being on the court, being able to like be with the basketball team and be with like Chris Stewart and all of these guys, just to be able to celebrate and relish in the fact that Alabama basketball has proven itself, in my opinion. So apologies for the being long-winded, but it just means a lot to me, man. It means a lot.
I don't know if, except for maybe the game at Tennessee this year, I can't really think of a team where I can't think of a game where this team has not come out and has just gone through the motions, or from the very start has not give an effort. The focus may not always be there for every game. But one of the things that Alabama people will get behind, when we want winners. Like, we ain't been nothing but a winner. I get that. But the second thing behind that is come out and show that you care from the very beginning. That's what I think 2 years ago really rubbed people the wrong way about that team. That they had some phenomenal wins against Houston and Gonzaga and Baylor, but they also had some really just ugly losses against teams where if you come out with just an ounce of effort, you should win. I mean, thinking about at Georgia, their only SEC win that entire year. This team has showed up every night. It may not have been pretty every night. There were definitely games, of course, where we got blown out. But even those games where we got blown out, I never really thought it was a lack of effort. I thought it was that, yeah, we had some deficiencies on the defensive side. We may not always be locked into the game plan. We may have just gotten, like in the example against Kentucky, their A+ game. But very rarely, I feel like, have I had to question this team's physical effort throughout the year.
No, I
I
mean,
mean, even in games like, I was trying to think of an example to go along with the Tennessee loss, but I even in the the two Florida losses, in the into those final couple of weeks, like if you look at the score, you see 185-87 and 102-88, which you'd think, oh, that kind of goes against it. But if you watched those games, like the team was they never gave up. They were still there fighting. Both of those games were games where Florida was just the better basketball team on that night, and nothing was gonna keep them from winning. And so they've taken that mentality, and when you have a mentality like that and you add winning to that mentality, that's when a team gets really dangerous. You can have all that mentality but the L's keep coming in, and that's also equally as dangerous in a bad way. But if you can add a win here or there and you see the results right in front of you in the win column, and that's how you build the team chemistry. That's how you just lay the foundation to build upon it. And that was something that this team really didn't have through non-conference play. They had it early on in the first couple of weeks of the season, but then once they started getting truly tested, the wheels didn't fall off, but they definitely blew a couple of tires, over the course of those couple of weeks. But then once people started getting back from being injured, once they started stringing 2, 3, 4 wins together to start conference play, we really just saw them. That was when I think Oates finally figured out the team, and that's when he started building on the foundation that they'd established early in in conference play. So, no, Charles, I completely agree with you, and it's been so much fun to watch how, not even a month ago, March 15th, that loss to Florida. If you had told me we'd come this far with the way that we saw the defense play in that game, not that the defense was bad, but just thinking how that defense would stack up against, a North Carolina or a Michigan State or an Arizona, whoever we were going to have to play in our bracket. It's just been something else.
and we talked about going into the tournament about that Charleston game. And I think we all agreed that Charleston game was a game that could instill confidence into the team, right?
Yeah.
Like that was like, okay, this is going to be our confidence game to get our confidence back. Because I really think that that's what the issue was with the guys is once Reitzel went down, then you have an overtime win versus Florida, and then you have a tough game versus Ole Miss, and then you lose a close one to Tennessee. You get blown out by Florida. You get blown out by Florida again, and then you you win a close one versus Arkansas. Didn't we go to overtime in that game too versus Arkansas?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Like
it's 92-88. I don't remember that much.
Those games are not games that are going to instill confidence into a team. Like you beat 2 teams that you were supposed to, but it took overtime, and you lost to 3 teams that you weren't supposed you're supposed to be competitive against. And so that Charleston game, I think it rejuvenated the type of confidence that the guys were missing, and then additionally, it showed the guys that hey, we can defend. because regardless of the fact that Charleston scored 96 points, they scored 96 points on our backups while they had their starters in down to the last 5 minutes and were fouling while they were down 15, 16 points with a minute to go because they were trying to prove a point. Like, that's what Charleston was doing. That's why that game was closer than what it is. When we pulled our starters, we were up by 30 points. Like, we had scored 100 points, they had scored 70 points. Like, that's so I think that was the turning point. And then on top of that, combining that with the Grand Canyon game, that was a game this year that Alabama should lost for a large part of the season. Like, that physical, low scoring game where you have to play defense, you have to do the necessary grind it out type of things down the stretch to win the game. Alabama comes out and wins by 11. And at that point, you're sitting there and you're like, okay, like, maybe this is a turning point. And then the North Carolina game, you go down 12 early in that game, but twice. You get down 12 twice in that game. And in the Clemson game, you get down 13 in that game. And something that I found interesting, I was listening to Next Round this morning, and I don't know if it was Ryan Brown or Jim Dunaway that said it, but I want to pose this to you guys. Versus UConn. If Alabama goes up 15 points or UConn goes up 15 points, which team do you think is a better chance of coming back in that game? UConn or Alabama?
I think I think Alabama has a better chance of coming back because like you just said, we've seen that time and time again, over and over again. But I also think that Alabama has a better chance of giving up a 15-point lead as well, if that makes any sense. I think, I mean, that's just my quick Cliff Notes answer. I think that, but it'd be interesting, I say that talking about UConn being able to come back and cut into a 15-point deficit. I say that, but that's also with the asterisk of we haven't seen Alabama jump up by that much since we've kind of seen this rejuvenation of the team over the past month. Every lead that they've jumped out in front of, they've pretty much held on to since the tournament started. So I know you mentioned the College of Charleston game. I mean, like you said, that doesn't even really matter because it was our bench players or our walk-ons. But I like Alabama. And these past few games have kind of taught me that even when Bama was down 13 to Clemson, I still didn't think we were out because you could see, and this goes back to what I was talking about earlier, you could still see the mentality the players were having. They didn't have negative body language. They weren't, drooping. They weren't, you still saw effort every single time on both the offensive and defensive ends of the floor. Now, if Alabama comes out and plays UConn and they get down, 15 early on, and we start to see that negative body language because this team is just tired and they've put forth their effort and this is the end of the road, that's when I get concerned. But as long as that effort and that energy is still there, I'm picking Bama to cut that deficit every time.
I talked a little bit about this last night on the space. UConn deserves every good comment from any pundit, any analyst, that they deserve it. But they are getting filled up with that and constantly. I mean, all you see is it's an honor to watch this UConn team play. They're the best. They're starting to get some of those. How would this team perform in the NBA? And every time for Alabama football that they started comparing that football team to an NFL team, I just want to mention those. I don't think a single one of those teams ever won the national championship. You just get filled up with all this. And so to your question of, who's got a better chance of coming back? I think we do. One, we've been there. One, we play a style that allows you to come back. But I feel like it's fair to question that if UConn is down 15 and we come out and punch them in the mouth, like where's their mindset? They've played 10 straight NCAA tournament games where they've won by double digits, and you're telling me that they're now down double digits at some point in the game. The crowd, 70,000 people will be in the arena. I can't imagine there's going to be 35,000 Connecticut fans, but maybe I don't know Connecticut basketball that well. So Alabama, I would expect, is going to have some type of home court advantage, I guess, in a game like that, because fans going for Connecticut, knowing that they've already beaten us once this year, would probably like to see us. So the psyche, the mental makeup, if something like that were to happen, I tend to believe that would be very challenging for Connecticut, because that's not just a physical effort, but that's a mental effort. Like, you can have as much confidence, but it's never been really shaken before. When you look at the game that they did get blown out this year at Creighton, Creighton hit them in the mouth halfway through the first half and just ran away with that game. So I do think it would be, in that scenario, I feel more confident about Alabama fighting its way back than maybe a Connecticut. And something that I wanted to look at before we got on, I went back and watched South Carolina's game against Gonzaga when they played in the Final Four, which I believe is 2017. Ironically, it was also in Phoenix. South Carolina got down in that game by 14 points and went on a 16-0 run to have a 2-point lead with 4 minutes to go. They couldn't close it out, but I would imagine everybody was on that Gonzaga team believing that they were going to beat South Carolina in that semifinal game. So we just, my hope is that we continue to play loose. I think that's what propelled us to both the wins over the weekend, that when we did get down, guys kept continuing to shoot. They had the confidence they could get back in the game. And I think if we can have that mindset and not allow the stage to get too big, like, we're going to be right there in it.
Yeah, and my point saying that is that when they talked about that on the round table this morning, they were talking about, Alabama, like you guys said, Alabama's been there. Alabama's been there the past 2 games, right? And in the Grand Canyon game, they were down 6. Like, it's not like Alabama's immune or like unheard of being down X amount of points. Like, that's what they've done for majority of the season. And they've come back. I mean, there's been, I think, 5 or 6 games this season that Alabama has come back double digits to win a game. How many of those UConn have, like, how many times has UConn been down double digits? I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I'm just saying that, like, if you're looking at this as an objective third party, do you like Alabama, who's been in those type of situations before, or do you like UConn, who has only lost 3 games this season? And because of that, looking at that makes me like more confident than what I was last night when we were talking about it. Like, what has this team done for me not to have confidence in them? Right? They've played tough versus Arizona. They played tough versus Creighton. They played tough versus Purdue. Right? They were a 1 of 14 shooting performance away from beating Tennessee, who was an Elite 8 team on their home court. Like, they've beaten Auburn, who by all national pundits said Auburn was a sleeper national championship caliber team, right? That won the SEC tournament. Like, all of these things Alabama has done. They played Clemson twice, who Clemson was in the Elite 8, beat them once. North Carolina, who was projected to beat Alabama, 93% of the money on like betting sites had North Carolina beating Alabama and covering the spread. So there's nothing that this team has shown me this year that doesn't allow me to be confident that they can come out. And why not us? Why not us? Like, it's hard to win back-to-back national championships. Why doesn't Alabama make it even more difficult by, go ahead and taking them to the woodshed?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, the Miracle on Ice. When you have in the 1980 Winter Olympics, you have the big old Russians, that haven't lost against anybody in forever. And then you have the little scrappy, United States team that's coming in there. And obviously they won that game. That wasn't people think that was the gold medal match. It wasn't. It was the game before the gold medal match. But which is kind of like what we have here. It's a semifinals, right? And so you have a scrappy little team that comes from nowhere and just punches the big, Goliath in the mouth. And then the Goliath hasn't trailed in so long that once they're out in front, once they're behind, they don't know how to respond. More importantly, their coach doesn't know how to respond because he's never had to deal with that before. And so I think that, I know we're talking a lot about jumping out ahead early, so probably need to roll that back a little bit. But, I do think that it's a very similar scenario. And if you can do that and put them in a situation early on that they haven't been in before, that really moves the advantage arrow to Alabama's side. So, yeah, I just thought, just thought of that comparison in my head and thought that was a interesting little scenario we have here.
Well, and we're not going to be scared. Like
Yeah.
using your miracle of ice analogy, the USA team got destroyed by Russia several weeks before that in kind of an exhibition. I wouldn't say we got destroyed last year in the PK 85, but we did lose by 15. We did fight back several times, and both teams are different. There is some leftovers from each one of those teams, but everybody that we've played this year, seeing them last year, like we're not going to be a team that's going to be intimidated because it says Connecticut or UConn on the front of their jerseys. Like I think we have the confidence that we can go toe to toe with them. Now, I have to admit, like our margin of error is small, but that still doesn't mean where everybody's saying Alabama's got no chance or Alabama's going to get blown out or just already talking about a Connecticut-Purdue national championship game. Alabama's proven it every step of the way this NCAA tournament. So I would not be writing Connecticut. If you want to write Connecticut, you better be writing it in pencil, not in ink.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that to mention with this Connecticut team, in the last 2 years, they haven't lost or they haven't had a tournament game that's within 13 points over the last 2 years. And he gets down the stretch and Alabama's down 5, down 3. Does UConn respond? Are they able to hold on? They haven't been in that situation the last 2 years in the NCAA tournament. Alabama has.
Their Final Four games last year, they blew out Miami and they blew out their path. So I know there's a lot of Auburn fans who talk about how easy our path was going through a 13-12, 1 and a 6. I don't think UConn fans are complaining about their path last year, which was a 13, a 5, an 8, a 3, a 5, and a 5. So they didn't see a single 1 seed or a 2 seed. But they're still a national champion. And they should be proud of that national championship. It doesn't matter how you got there. It's the fact that you're there and you have this opportunity.
Well, Auburn fans are just saying that because they had to go beat Kansas, North Carolina, and Kentucky to get to the Final Four. Like, I'm sorry that those teams won and the teams on our bracket who we have zero control over did not win their games. Like, also to sit here and say, oh, Alabama had to play a 6 to get to a Final Four. Well, that 6 beat the 2 and the 3 seed. So, like,
Auburn also got to play in Birmingham as a 9 seed last year and still lost opening weekend. So I don't know if they can really talk about that too much.
They got a home game and lost. So it is what it
you
is.
said something about expectations, just as far as, and I know you were talking about expectations when Nate Oates was hired. And I just want to take just a quick second, and this may be dumbing down expectations for the future. But I still think going forward, when you think about Alabama basketball, the expectation it needs to be make the NCAA tournament. It doesn't matter what seed you are, just make the NCAA tournament and give yourself a chance. So as people start to compare, because I think this year's team had a lot of comparisons to or people wanted to compare them to last year's team and say this was an unsuccessful season before the NCAA tournament because they didn't reach a 1 seed or they didn't win the SEC regular season or didn't beat anybody, one of the big programs in the non-conference. I just want to go ahead and I think Christian, you call it level set. Like going forward, it's still just make the NCAA tournament. Tom Izzo's made the NCAA tournament 26 times in his career at Michigan State. He's only made the second weekend 15 times. I say only. It's a great percentage. But you have to give yourself an opportunity to do that. And that's what this program needs. So regardless of what the team looks like next year, that needs to be the expectation. I would say have a double bye in the SEC tournament, but since the league's changing next year, I think my SEC expectations may change as well. I'm just seeing how things kind of play out. But as far as this program and continue to move forward, continue to rack up NCAA tournament appearances, continue to put numbers on that NCAA tournament banner, And then hopefully through that, we'll continue to add Sweet 16 and Final Four banners at some point to the rafters in Coleman.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say about that is, you look at like, and not to, and I apologize for talking about Auburn so much, but it's a good point. First of all, I know you guys aren't on Twitter right now, but I need to say this quote that Nate Oates just said on Hey Coach. I was looking at it. He said, on Hey Coach, we could not have had the other school in state having the only Final Four in the state. That had to change. First of all, just absolutely electric quote from Nate Oates. But what I'll say about the expectations front and level setting, right? You don't want to go into a season ever expecting a Final Four, ever expecting an Elite Eight. The reason why you don't, Sweet 16, okay, I can understand some people having that type of expectation. I still don't like to have it, but I can understand it. The reason why you don't want to do that is you get into a situation like Auburn did this year, who loses in the opening round, and now their SEC tournament championship that they had doesn't mean anything. And now they're displeased with Bruce Pearl. And then you go and you see Alabama, who makes a run, whatever, and now it's even more of an issue. Doing that consecutive years is how coaches get fired, because then the fan base becomes displeased with what's going on. And that's not what needs to happen, because Nate Oates is proving that he is a coach that can get Alabama to the heights that it wants to be at and then some. If Alabama gets to the tournament and loses in the opening weekend, that's fine. It's okay. It happens. It's March Madness. That's the reason why it's called March Madness. But to have those type of lofty expectations year in and year out, this isn't football where there's 12 teams, but prior there were only 4 teams. If you make the 4, you're good. Like, there's 64 teams or 68 teams technically, and at any given point, a team can go out and beat you on a basketball court. That's how unpredictable basketball is. So just appreciate and enjoy. And like Charles said, the expectation is get to the NCAA tournament. And once you get there, obviously you saw things can happen. You can make a run, or you cannot make a run, and it's okay. But at least you got to the table, like Charles likes to say, get to the table, and then we'll see we can go from there. So looking at the UConn game, what are your guys' thoughts? Obviously UConn's a monster this season. How do you guys like Alabama's chances?
So since we spoke the Grant Nelson game into existence, I'd like to go ahead and start speaking some other things into existence right now. Mark Sears has been compared to Jalen Brunson a lot. I know when we met Rob Doster and Jeff Goodman at the A&M game, that's one of the things they said to me is he just looks like Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson's team at Villanova in 2018 had to go through Alabama, but when they won the national championship that year, they played Kansas in the semifinal game. They went 18 of 40 from the 3-point line in that game. And Christian, I thought you brought up a good point just as far as sight lines and things like that. Like it's going to be different shooting in that arena. But I'm saying that because it can be done. Like if they can make 18, I think our team can make 18. I think our team could make even more than 18. But by doing that, we've got to get more than 16 attempts that we had against Connecticut last year in the PK 85. And we can't turn the ball over 21 times like we did last year as well. Klingon's obviously, a big presence down there. But kind of similar to North Carolina, I don't see the size issues necessarily. Like Caravan's 6'8". I think it's Castle or Tristan Newton. They're 6'5", 6'6". But we went through Grand Canyon, who had several 6'8" and 6'10" guys. We just went through Clemson, who had several 6'8", 6'10" guys. So, yes, you're going to have a mismatch with Klingon. But everywhere else on the floor, you can match up size-wise pretty decently. So I'm not concerned about just getting beat over the head necessarily or out physicaled. from a size standpoint. So I feel a lot more confident than maybe what I did originally. And knowing that the game they lost to Creighton was 14 of 28 from the 3-point line. So they've given up games where where a team has hit a lot of 3-pointers. Their closest game in recent memory was against St. John's in Madison Square Garden for the Big East tournament, which I know is kind of a St. John's home game. And St. John's made it close in the end, but that game was 95-90, and Connecticut was 11 of 20 from the 3-point line. You know, they miss a few of those or shoot more of their 35% from the three. That's a game St. John's wins. So I think we gotta hit threes. We gotta keep the ball hot. We gotta get the tempo going. If Klingen's gonna score, that means he's scoring at the rim. You get the ball out of the basket, 2-3 passes, you get it going the other side in 4 seconds and make him run 94 feet consistently. But I think it's really important for our guys to play loose like they did against Clemson. We were 1 of 13 from the 3-point line and then went 15 of 23 the rest of the game to finish 16 of 36. You got to shoot the ball with that type of confidence throughout the game, even if you're 1 of 10, 1 of 15. You just got to keep shooting, and I think things will play themselves out. And I feel a lot more confident about how we match up, and just some of the things that are going on than maybe I did right after Saturday night or Sunday morning.
You know, I think with you kind of touched on a lot of the points that I was going to make, Charles, but I think if UConn wants to win this game, which I think it is still in their favor, but if they want to win this game, they're going to have to hit the three, which is something they really haven't done. I know they've been outscoring everybody and they're a fantastic team and yada, yada, yada. You know, you can't turn on ESPN without hearing how great they are. But if you really look at their 3-point shooting, you know, against Northwestern, they were 3 of 22, I believe. Against Illinois, they were 3 of 17. So not only are they not making threes, but they're also not shooting a lot. You know, when you have Alabama, who's 16 of 36, I think. They've been winning by dominating the inside. They've been winning and getting layups. They've been winning by being physical and driving to the basket. If you had asked me a month ago how I felt about this Alabama team matching up against them, I would not have liked their chances. I do like them better now because what did we just see Alabama probably improve the best on defense? It was the inside. They did a really, really good job against Clemson underneath the basket. And I think that when you combine that with, I don't know if UConn's really played a team like Alabama as far as how efficient they are at the perimeter on offense. When Creighton beat UConn, I think they held, if I'm remembering correctly, I think Creighton held them to 3 of 16 from 3.
Yes.
And then Creighton themselves shot 14 in that game. So if Alabama is able to, if their offense continues to fire on all cylinders like they have been, and Creighton is kind of limited from on the arc and they're forced to push inside like they have been in the past couple of games, I really like Alabama's chances. Will Alabama win? I'm not going to pick an Alabama W today, I don't think, but I think that this game is a lot closer than a lot of people are talking about. I know I'm still picking UConn, but I'm picking it 4, 5, 6 point win. I'm not picking the 15 to 20 point wins that we're seeing left and right. I think this Alabama defense has dramatically improved in all the areas that UConn's done well with. And then on offense, you know, just a couple of weeks ago, the offense was still struggling and it's finally found its groove, particularly beyond the arc. So, and even more important, Bama is able to diversify its offense even more now. They're not as one-dimensional as they were several weeks ago. We've seen Bama get more physical. We've seen them being able to drive it in, and those and ones are finally starting to happen again. We're finally getting under the basket and getting foul calls, and actually the ball's falling into the net. So, overall, you know, as you can tell, I'm getting pretty excited. I still, you know, have my reservations, but I think this game is going to be a lot closer than a lot of people think it's going to be.
And I think the big thing about this game is the pace. I really do. UConn's pace is 315th in the nation. They have a 7'2" Klingen playing down low. Alabama's 9th. The fastest team that UConn has faced this season was Xavier, who was 30th in pace, or tempo. And I think that Alabama is going to force UConn into playing fast. And when you have a team that's not used to playing fast, they usually tend to rush things. They usually tend to rush shots, which causes missed shots. And if Alabama can get 3 or 4 possessions in a row of stops, then there's a chance that Alabama's up 9-10 points on UConn. And sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, especially if you can couple that with some catch and shoot threes, like we saw Alabama able to do against Clemson. If you're a team like UConn, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. If you're a team like UConn that's used to being ahead, there's nothing more demoralizing than not only getting your butt kicked on the defensive end of the court, but then after you spent probably 22 seconds trying to get the ball into the basket, then having to fast break down the other end for a catch and shoot three. If you do that 2, 3, 4 times over a course of like a 6-minute span, that's the type of recipe that we're talking about here that makes it really difficult for teams like UConn to respond to. And I think we kind of saw that with Creighton earlier this year. That was something that they did multiple times throughout that game. Sorry, Christian, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just wanting to ride along with that.
No, that's totally okay. I agree. Do I think Alabama wins? No. I think it would be disingenuous and very Homer-esque to pick Alabama to win this game. And I try to be as much unbiased as possible. Do I think Alabama covers? Yeah, I do. I think the spread's 11.5 right now. I think Alabama covers. If Alabama doesn't cover, that means one of 2 things. One, they got into foul trouble with their bigs, and Klingon was able to do whatever he wants to do on the interior. Or 2, shots weren't falling. But if shots are falling and we can limit foul trouble, then I think Alabama can keep it close. And in a close game, I know Dan Hurley's won the national championship, but in a close game, I'm not picking Nate Oates over anybody. I'm not. I'm riding with my coach, and that is me being a homer. And I know Dan Hurley's a good coach, but I'm riding with Nate Oates as long as I can. So that's kind of my thoughts on the game.
I expect Tristan Newton for them to do what he does. I expect Klingon to do what he does. Cam Spencer is definitely a guy you need to slow down. Stephon Castle is a guy you need to slow down. The guy who I'm really focused on that could be an X factor for them is Alex Caravan. He was good against us last year. He's 6'8". He's a guy that could be guarded by Grant Nelson. He's a guy that could be guarded by Rylan Griffin. He's a guy that Stevenson or Diabate, but he similar to maybe how Cormac Ryan got hot against us. He's a guy that I feel like if you stop him, in addition to stopping 1 or 2 other guys and make them more 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional, not 5-dimensional, you obviously give yourself a much better chance in the game. Like against North Carolina, Baycott got his numbers. RJ Davis eventually got his, but it was on a high, volume shooting. Cormac Ryan was great. Harrison Ingram was okay. But we slowed down some of those guys. And I just think Caravan's the guy that we really got to stop. He's not the focal point of the game plan, but you can't focus on Newton and Klingon and then forget about Caravan and him hitting 3-point shots against us.
Yeah. But Joey, you're going to the game, right?
Yes, I will. I'll be flying out of here, Birmingham on Friday morning, and I will be flying back. My plane lands in Birmingham at 7:30 a.m. on Monday. So that'll be right to the office after that.
Oh, you're not going to go to the national championship game if they make it?
No, I won't be. It was already a fairly sizable financial I don't want to say burden. It was a financial endeavor to make it out there. And so I especially with how expensive, granted, if Alabama makes it, then tickets might not be that expensive, but
right.
You never know. You never know. So no, I won't be there for Monday, but I will be there for both games on Saturday. So should be fun. I'm glad we have the NC State Purdue game kind of whet our appetite, because I think that's also going to be a really good game too.
Yeah, you can see DJ Burns versus Zach Edey, which is just going to be a phenomenal matchup.
That reminds me to mention, Burns, Edey, Klingon, they're all going to get talked about this week. The bigs of March. What wins in March? What wins the NCAA tournament? Guards. Play. Who's got the best guard in the NCAA tournament? Alabama does with March Sears.
That he does, or that we do. Jeez, words. Well, I mean, I wish I could go. I think my trip for the year was, when I mean for the year, I mean for the entire year, was to LA. And my wife's been trying to get me to go, and I'm like, I financially, like, we just can't do it. But I said I'm more than content and more than happy to have been able to sit and watch us advance to the Final Four for the first time ever. And I mean, I can watch a game on my TV and be happy with that. But
you will need to come back later this year though, for when they hang the Final Four banner though. You're gonna have to come to that game, right?
Well, yeah, that expense is a lot easier than flying to like that's just getting in the car and
bustling metropolis of Tuscaloosa.
Yeah. That's just like driving down 8 hours, 7 hours to Tuscaloosa, which is not difficult to do whatsoever.
That's fair.
But yeah, I'll definitely be there for that.
Cool. We should do, like, I know that I probably shouldn't discuss this on an open podcast, but we should definitely do something next season for that, like have a meet and greet or have a thing before that game, whoever we play.
Yeah, we'll be signing really cool autographs at Innisfree for whoever wants to come.
Well, not signing on, you know what I mean. I just be kind of like what we've been doing at Innisfree, this year. I think that'd be fun. Reminiscing on either the UConn loss or the national championship win, one of those two things. So.
Here's a question I have for you guys. If Alabama somehow beats UConn, do they win the national championship?
I mean, we saw what they did against Clemson when they played them twice. If they play Purdue, I really do like their odds, because I think they'll have a better game plan for Edey at this point. Plus, there's more film to go back to for Purdue than early on the season. If they play NC State, I think Bama's a much better team than NC State, but we've seen NC State take down some pretty good teams. So weirdly enough, I like their chances against Purdue better. But yeah, I think we'll be having an emergency podcast either way. So we'll see what happens.
Well, we're gonna have to. I was just thinking about this.
That's fair.
Because we don't really record Mondays, and that would be the national championship game. So we'll have to record on Sunday, which, Joey, I don't know how you're going to do that. You might not be able to even do that. If
people are fine with horrible audio of me talking over my phone, then yeah, I can do that. But yeah, I probably will be in an airport somewhere. We'll figure that out when
You'll probably be hungover somewhere, is what I'm presuming.
No, I have a rule. I don't fly hungover, especially when I have to get off the plane and immediately walk to my office on Monday morning. So I might be hungover Saturday morning, but definitely not Sunday. Well, granted, it depends on how the game goes. I can't really predict that. So, oh gosh.
Charles, what do you think? Does Alabama win? If they win on Saturday, do you think they win on Monday?
Yeah, I think if we're playing NC State, look, credit to DJ Burns. He's been the face of the NCAA tournament to an extent this year, and credit to what NC State has done. Winning 9 games in a row right now. But I just think that our pace would wear down somebody like DJ Burns, and that's not to. I mean, they still got. I think it's Middlebrooks. They got DJ Horn. They got McCullough. They got other guys, but you neutralize him with the pace, and I think we would get it into a game that really benefits our guards. Playing Purdue again, we shot the ball incredibly well from the 3-point line in that game. For us to get to that point, I think means we shoot the ball incredibly well against Connecticut, so there should be some confidence there. Edey had to go for 35, and I think Brendan Smith, I hope I didn't get his name wrong, he went for 27. And they were really hot from the 3-point line as well. So, if you can limit them from the 3-point line and get back into the game where we're trading, threes for twos and all that, then yeah, I really like our chances in that game. And, look, Zach Edey gets a lot of controversial talk about how he's officiated. I mean, we obviously experienced that where Mo Wagi's at the free throw line with his jersey halfway ripped off. He's probably got 4 fouls and Edey's got 1. Officials are not going to call a game just be a certain way just because it's the national championship game. But you would hope that, it's not a ref show and that it's just watching Edey go to the free throw line and constantly shoot. And look, I think there's still a ton of pressure on Purdue with what happened last year. I know Sunday was a huge relief for them to get to the Final Four, but now you're playing in the national championship game and the pressure to kind of do what Virginia did. Whereas you look at somebody like us, who again, I think would be playing loose. I think would just be enjoying the moment. Like it's another one of those where if you get up early, like we did it's different getting up early in the national championship game than it was in Canada in just a, early conference tournament that was built for, Bediako and Edey to play against each other. So I like our chances against either one of them. I like our chances Saturday night. There's just something about this team that is not going to, they just won't lose. They've had everything against them. They've, had every reason to quit. And yet we're here in the Final Four, with an opportunity to do something, to continue to do things that have never been done before. So I feel really good about us.
Are you picking us to win on Saturday? Is that what you're saying?
Why not, man? Sam Walters legacy game, okay? Sam Walters and Latrell Wrights will just go off. It's great to get Latrell back out there. Sam he won't officially bookend it because we'll play in the national championship game on Monday night. But the talk of the year was Sam Walters hitting all those threes against TCU. He gets hot. Rice gets hot. We get up early. Everything we were just talking about as far as UConn can't handle it mentally as far as getting down double digits. Hurley gets a technical, yeah, let's do it. You know what? All the talking heads are talking about how we don't have a chance. They've said we haven't had a chance from the start. I'm not a talking head. I'm a nobody. I'll say it. We're playing in the national championship game on Monday night. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. I wish this wall was brick so I could run through it.
And run through the we have to have one homer on here, I guess. I guess we got to have one homer.
Hey, look, as you called out, I've already hung my Final Four banner up here. I couldn't wait to get to
hey, when you can hang a banner, you hang a banner.
That's
what
right.
I'm going to say.
That's right.
As a Nashville Preds fan, that's what we do.
Hey, and I'll say this. Alabama in championship games under Nate Oates is undefeated. It's undefeated.
That is fair. That is fair.
Unless you count the Tennessee game this season as a championship game, which I don't count it as a championship game because things still had to happen in order for us to win the championship, even after that game. So, I mean, who knows? That's why you play on the court. That's why you play 40 minutes. You never know what's going to happen.
Can't wait for Bama to win this game, and then somebody come and supercut every negative thing we said on this podcast about how Bama was going to lose between me and you, Christian, and then I'm just going to retweet it, be like, yes, I'm so sorry, I'm so glad I was wrong.
See, Joe, you have to learn the ways of the reverse jinx. Anytime you say something negative, you just say, "Oh, I knew that it was going to happen. I just was jinxing them just so that they could, That's what I do.
Speaking of jinxes, y'all seem to forgot that Sam Sykes will do whatever is needed for this team to win, which means getting out of the house too. And Connecticut hasn't had to face a force like that. So,
hey, she didn't have to leave the arena for the Elite Eight game. She didn't have to leave. She was in the suite. Maybe it's because she was in the suite. Maybe that's why. Maybe she was, she got a dessert cart everything. She was sitting high. I mean, I was on the floor, fighting for my life because the water in the press conference area wasn't working, and I was so parched, it was not even funny. I couldn't even get water for both games, or for both games. I couldn't get water. I was just like, or I was, it was bad. It was bad. I was fighting for my life on the media row. I mean, I don't know how I survived.
Before we leave, the run that we had of knocking down 3-pointers. But I mean, Clemson was hitting them too, but we had that stretch where we hit 3 or 4. And you probably talked about it. We thought that would be, we'd have 65-35 crowd advantage. It seemed like it was loud each time we hit one of those. Can you kind of describe it for us that were not there? Like what the atmosphere was like each time we hit a big 3 in the second half?
Yeah, it was weird. It was really weird because like when Mark hit that logo 3, like it was loud, but I was like, like it was loud. But then I went back and like watched the video. I was like, oh wow, it was like really, really loud. And I didn't even like, I guess maybe it didn't just register, but I'll say this. So I was facing the Alabama bench and the Clemson bench was over here. Clemson was behind the Clemson bench. And it was a bunch of orange, and then you could look around the arena and it was just speckles of orange, nothing really major, but you could see an Alabama contingent, and then around the arena you could see a ton, and I mean a ton of Alabama fans. And so additionally, I think that non or like objective third party people that came to watch the game were rooting for Alabama, like just because of how exciting like they were playing, like hitting the threes. Because I think what happened is like Clemson would hit a 3 and then Alabama would hit a 3, and like the objective third parties were just cheering. And so you just see Alabama hit a 3, or Clemson hit a 3, Alabama hit a 3, Clemson hit a 3, Alabama hit a 3, Alabama gets a stop, Alabama hits another 3, and at that point I think just like the build up of the fans just going and cheering, and it just the arena exploded. And sorry, Sam's leaving the house. Sam, you're not supposed to leave the house yet. It's not Saturday.
Don't use it up now.
But no, it was crazy. And shout out to all the Alabama fans that came. I know that was a short notice thing, and a lot of people did do a red eye flight. I think there was like an 11 p.m. flight out of LA. So people literally came in for the day and left. And I really think, and I'll say this now, I think Alabama's going to have an advantage in Phoenix. I think there's going to be a ton, and I mean a ton of Alabama fans in Phoenix. I've seen maybe 200-300 people so far that are saying that they're going to Phoenix. If you have the financial means to go, I know it's expensive. Go to the game if you can. If not, spend time with your family. Like I said last week in the emergency podcast that we did, spend time with your family. Watch the game with someone, because these are core memories that you're going to be able to keep forever. There's only one time that you can ever say that you got to watch the first Final Four game that Alabama played in. It's not going to be the last. I'll tell you that much. But this is the first one, and so appreciate that. Spend it with some people. And unlock some core memories is what I would say.
Yeah, and for those that are out there, one, enjoy the game and enjoy the atmosphere. I'm curious to see what, Alabama royalty. I hope Coach Sanderson can be out there. I hope Robert Horry, I know he is at the games for the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. I hope he goes to Phoenix. I hope somebody like Antonio McDyess. So if you see people like that, obviously post it on Twitter if they're willing to allow you to take a picture and post it on Twitter. But I'm interested to see just the quote unquote celebrities, I guess, both Alabama basketball and just Alabama fans that are out there that are going to soak in this experience. And since Joey, you're going to be out there, I think we talked a little bit about it on the space last night too. If there's a group that's trying to get connected, you can probably reach out to Joey, reach out to myself or Christian, and we'll try to help coordinate it. But I mean, I talk a lot about it because I've experienced it, because I've lived it. just the whole Alabama community. Like I've got a lot of family members that are a part of this, journey as well with me. But the community that's been created by Crimson Crossover just makes this so much more fun. And I think that's what's allowed all of us to stay sane, at least to get to this point too. So, man, whether you're with family, whether you're with people that you've watched Alabama basketball with for years, just man, have an awesome time. It's gonna be a fun week, and just really excited for the game to get here on Saturday.
Absolutely. Also have to say, J&J did release a Final Four shirt. It's a very comfortable shirt. We have the Alabama Game Day shirt is the same material. It's not comfort colors. I know some people were disappointed in that. I'm telling you right now, and Joey and Charles, you can back me up. That Alabama Game Day shirt is extremely comfortable.
Yes.
Completely objectively, it's probably the most comfortable t-shirt I own. Like I'm not overstating that. Like it is a very, very comfortable t-shirt. I really like it.
It's the same thing. So, I find it better than comfort colors personally. But they just released that today. Go pick that up. Go support them. It's the first Final Four shirt. Like, why not go get it? I like it better than what the university released. In addition to that, we're obviously wearing J&J. I got my pullover. Charles got his pullover, and then Joey's got his polo, his golf polo. But go purchase some of their stuff. I'll let you guys know we're working on an illustration shirt for either a season recap or hopefully, fingers crossed, national championship illustration shirt similar to that College Game Day one that we release. Maybe more in line with what people have kind of come to know with J&J apparel. It's just, you guys got to realize that sometimes those things take a week or so to make, and there was about 2 days to make a shirt. So I still love it. I think the shirt's fantastic. It's a great design. And obviously it's a Final Four shirt. So be sure to go pick one of those up. Obviously, support Field of 68. That's our media podcast network. They're going to be covering, I think they're going out to Phoenix to cover the games. So support them as they do that. And as always, I hope you guys have a great day, a great week. And, hopefully we're talking on Sunday about how Alabama's playing for the national championship, which would just be absurd. But with that, I think we're good to go. And we'll talk again soon. Roll Tide.